I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.
All right, welcome to Coach's Corner. Today, we got my man all the way from Long Island out here, Marcos Paz, pro fighter, coach. What else? We boxing entertainment business, Paz Entertainment. We got it all right there. He wears so many hats. Welcome to Coach's Corner. And we want to congratulate you off a big win, your last pro fight in New York. I know you were training. We tried to hook it up while you were training, but I understand how that goes. And, welcome to Coach's Corner. We appreciate you spending the time coming out here, Marcos. And, awesome to have you here today.
Coach Dave, it's an honor to be here on Coach's Corner, an honor to be speaking with you. And just to everybody in Connecticut, man, I just want to give a big special shout out to everybody that supports boxing, supports Champs Boxing, supports Coach Dave, and let's get it rolling, man.
Yeah. So, when we met, we met with your nephew at the amateur shows and, through, being around in boxing, we build relationships, everybody. But really never really had an opportunity to sit down and really talk to you about you in boxing. And, you asked me off the air, we kind of talked about what got me involved, but, how did boxing find you?
How did boxing find me? I think it would be the typical boxing story in which a father started in the sport and for whatever reason, right, he couldn't continue with his career. And then my father passed on that knowledge that he had training all those years onto me. And then eventually I developed a passion for it. And then it just grew into what we have right now, which is my professional career.
Is your dad in the beginning, is he the one that trained you and obviously passing his knowledge, but is he your lead trainer for your fights and from your amateur career to your professional career?
Yes, my father's always been my lead trainer from the start. Now we're working with Gary Stark, which is, renowned,
I know Gary. That's right. Yeah.
Renowned trainer. Shout out to my man, Gary Stark. Also with Joe Chiamba was my cut man.
You got some good people right there in that corner right there. Some real solid boxing people. So, let's touch on one thing, right? The dynamic of father and son in boxing is a tough dynamic.
Super tough, man.
I'm working with Iman Lee right now where his dad is the head coach. Fernelli Feliz, I've worked with, and obviously his two sons, Fernelli Feliz Jr. and Ali Feliz, he's the head coach. Talk to me about the dynamic from you as a fighter and the relationship that you have, because your dad is wearing two hats. He's your dad and your coach. So how does that dynamic work for you?
For us, it works pretty well, but I will say this, and this is me being brutally honest, right? It's not the easiest of dynamics for anybody that has their father as their coach, just because of the fact, like you mentioned, you have to separate those two personas, being the trainer and being the father. And in a fight, sometimes you let those two intertwine and it becomes a problem. You have to have, I would say, those nerves of steel to be able to, in critical moments when your eyes are swollen, when you have a cut over your face, to not throw in the towel too soon, but also not be too brave and send your son out for another round knowing that he might get hurt.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line that you got to walk.
I mean, you're definitely right. That's a double fine line because you're wearing two hats. You're wearing your dad hat and the coaching hat. And because you coach also, you work at all aspects in the fight game, as coaches, that do we send them out? Do we not send them out? That's a tough question as it is right there as a coach, let alone being a dad and a coach on
Correct.
that. How's the training? Because, look, you're a knowledgeable guy. You also train fighters. You're involved in this sport, not only as a fighter. You live the life of the sport. You're working on the back end. You make your relationships. You travel a lot. You've been around a lot of people in gyms. So, your dad becoming, I'm sure, is an old school trainer.
Absolutely.
You're the new generation of boxing. Okay, boxing still stays the same. Fundamentals are fundamentals. They don't change, but styles, training styles as far as the old school, how does that play? Is there conflict there during camp?
I don't think so. I think I'm very much old school myself, despite being young. Now, there are things that we could incorporate just because the times have changed. There's much more knowledge behind things, nutrition, strength and conditioning, which I don't knock it. It's a plus. But I think old school fundamentals, solid fundamentals, are what at the end of the day make any fighter elite. It's perfecting the basics.
Yeah.
And I feel, Coach Dave, that the higher you go up, the simpler boxing becomes. But it's about who can master those basics at that level. That ends up being the one.
You made a good point there, Marcos. Consistency in this sport, right? All the things you're talking about, conditioning, strength and conditioning, recovery, all these things have come into play in boxing. It's great to have, right? But boxing hasn't changed. You walk into any boxing gym and you're coaching somebody, you teach them to throw the jab the same way.
Mm-hmm.
There's variations of the jab, but your fundamentals all the same. Your footwork, the way you stand, the way you punch, that hasn't changed in hundreds and hundreds of years.
And it'll never change.
Right. So if we look at fighters, the ones who consistently do that over and over again and execute, those are the fighters that are successful. I think sometimes we take our technology and everything going on out there today and complicate the sport a little bit, if that kind of makes sense to you. You know, because everybody feels like, oh, I need to do this better. Okay, you do. But focus on the fundamentals: jab, right hand, hook, footwork, move. Right?
Absolutely.
You can't get away from certain things in boxing, right? You have to run and you have to jump rope.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
So, like, you could do all the other conditioning in the world. If you're not running, you're going to get exposed somewhere along the line.
And the ring doesn't lie.
No, the ring doesn't lie.
You know, it's like a lie detector, right? You can fool your coach. You can fool the fans. You can fool your family. Shit, you could even fool yourself, right? You can start believing your own lies. But when you get in that ring, it's going to expose what you really been doing outside.
It definitely is. And I think, you know, we also have more coaches today, per se coaches. A lot more people get involved in boxing today than, years ago, there wasn't this pool of coaches. You know, you had to go to certain gyms if you wanted to go to the next level of the sport. You know, today there are more gyms. There's more people supposedly coaching. There's more tournaments and everything else. So it gives a lot of different looks in trainers. Like, don't think we're building trainers like we did in the past.
If I could say something, right? I think there's a difference between coaches and teachers, right? There's a lot of coaches, but there's few teachers.
Yeah.
And I think that what makes a good teacher in boxing is a trainer that's able to not only teach you how to throw the right punches, teach you how to stand, teach you how to move your head, but explain why and make you believe it as well, you know? It's not just about doing it. It's understanding when and how to do it.
Well, you know, as a fighter, coach, coming from a family of boxing and being in the sport, you know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day. I said, we don't care how tough you are. Boxing is not okay, you need to be tough and tough in the sense that, hey, I'm training, I'm picking myself up when I'm down, and I'm sorry, but it's a tactical sport. It's a thinking man's sport. You have to be able to react. You have to be able to think on your feet during a fight. The better the fighters are, it's like they see you make a mistake, they execute a shot.
That's why it's called chess, not checkers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and getting back to the trainer aspect of it is we're losing the old trainer teachers. It's not being passed. Well, look, yours is being passed from your dad to you.
Right.
And hopefully you'll pass it to somebody else, right? So that's what we need to do, and we're losing that today. You know, you just said you got, Gary Stark's been around. Joe Quiambo's been around. Those are guys that, have been in the sport for years and years, and hopefully they pass what they have. But I don't see a lot of people today gravitating because boxing, whether you're a fighter, a coach, or a trainer, takes a lot of time out of your life.
It takes a lot of time, and I also believe that just as being a fighter requires talent and discipline, being a trainer as well requires a distinct talent. Because if you've noticed something, Dave, there's a lot of ex-fighters, right? And I would say even ex-world champions that become trainers, and they're not really that successful because they're transmitting their way of fighting, how they were taught, and they think it's a cookie-cutter approach to training each fighter, when in reality, each fighter's different. You can't train the tall fighter the same way you train the short
No,
fighter.
and you know
Vice versa.
something, Marcos, I think it's ego too.
Yeah.
I think ex-fighters, and I'm not trying to disrespect any. There's
Right.
some great ex-fighter trainers out there, and I'm not, but they still revert back to the things that they did as fighters.
Absolutely.
You have to take yourself out of the equation when you're working with somebody. You don't give a shit what I did as a fighter,
Right.
right? All you as a fighter, all you're worrying about is how you going to make me better.
Right.
How am I going to become world champion? You had your shot or whatever, or maybe you didn't, or maybe you did, whatever the case may be. I want to be a world champion. That's why I have you here. How do you make? I think, some ex-fighters train and they still want to be involved in the game for whatever reason. Some are great trainers. But I honestly think, look, we talked about this. I had 3 amateur fights. I don't run from it. I don't tell anybody I was this, that. I
Right.
tell you, people ask me if I boxed. I said, yes. They said, how'd you box? I said, very badly.
Straight
Now,
shooter.
Straight, that's
shooter.
it. But you know what? Angelo Dundee was not a fighter. Coach Muhammad Ali.
Great trainer.
Customato was not a fighter. Okay?
Eddie
we know.
Futch.
We know who they coached. We all know, right? So it is being a trainer, being a teacher, being a coach is all of that because fighters are emotional, they're temperamental, they're insecure. There's a lot of stuff going on with that fighter, and when you spend a lot of time with somebody, you got to try to be able to connect on the personal level.
And if I could interrupt,
Yeah.
I think that a trainer, right, or a teacher, I should better say, because that's the lingo term that I used, right? The teacher is not only a trainer in boxing, but he's also your psychologist.
Oh, of course.
He has to make you believe that you're able to pull it off. He has to make you believe that all the work was done and that it's more than enough, right? Because sometimes us fighters, we want to go the extra mile. Like you see guys that post, I'm running while they're sleeping, right? And the reality is you're just burning yourself out. That's what you're doing, right? I think that when you go overboard, it's a sign of insecurity in your training. There's a fine line.
Everybody's, right, we all think that we're not going to do enough,
Right.
whatever it is, right? Well, oh man, did I train enough? Did I spar enough? Did I hit the bag enough? Did I run enough? Did I eat the right food? Did I do everything? There's always that little bit of doubt. You're right. The trainer's got to put it. And if you have a trainer, right, the way I learned is this. You're getting ready to fight, right? Okay, how many rounds we fight? We fighting 4? We fighting 6? Let's say we fighting 10, all right? We got 8-week camp, 10-week camp. You're already in shape? Yeah, you're in good shape. We don't got to waste 2 weeks really to get fight camp shape, okay? We can wean you in. So we set the process, right? This is the code. We sit down, okay? First week, second week, this is what is expected of you. We're going 2, 3 a day. How many rounds do we need to spar? Who we fighting? What weight? Where do we got to find the sparring? Okay? We figure the amount of rounds that we want. Everything has got to be put into that little bit of computer, right? So the fighter knows. There's no guesswork in it, right? Like you don't show up the next morning and say, hey, what are we doing today? No. Hey, if we boxing at night, we running in the morning.
Exactly.
If we're doing our conditioning, we conditioning after we run.
There's a structure behind it.
Yeah, you got to be regimented, right? And as a fighter, that regimentation is going to fuck with a fighter. Excuse my French. It's going to fuck with you, right? Now, you're a fighter that has to make weight. That fucks with you in a different way. Then, when I work with the big guys, I love the big guys. We don't got to make weight. We just got to maintain being in shape, right? Not to make sure that we eat our way out of the division, right? But, there's a lot of intangibles and a lot of emotion in 8 to 10 weeks of camp.
Absolutely.
Now, do you live at home with your dad at camp?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you understand. Now, I've had fighters live with me for camp, okay, 8 to 10 weeks. And, you get down to the last 10 days or the last 2 weeks, and fighters they're ready to go, man. They've been locked up, away from their families, not getting to eat or do what they want to do. All it is wake up, train, sleep, wake up, train, go over tape, talk boxing, eat boxing, maybe a little bit of something, but we don't really do too much during camp.
It's boot camp, man.
We go to camp and it's like, on Sunday we go to church.
Right.
So it's like, that's the big event, right? Maybe we go out to eat here and there, but, You know, it depends on who the fighter is and what, but you got to play with those emotions, and I don't think people see that work. Like, you just fought a 4-round fight.
Correct.
People see what you post after you fight. They don't realize what you did for that 4-round fight. They don't realize the amount of work that went in for that 4-round fight. People say, "Oh, well, you only fought 4 rounds." Okay, can you fight 4 rounds? Because you know what? Maybe he fought 4 rounds, but you don't realize he trained for 8 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks.
Doing 2 and 3 a days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's one thing, like you said, it's like 4 rounds on the outside looking in. It's very easy to criticize and say that you could do it, right? It's only 12 minutes, right? But in reality, those 12 minutes feel like an eternity when you're out of shape.
Listen,
or even being in shape, right? But your nerves, right? Your nerves take over sometimes.
well, the anxiety of the night, right? So, like, let's talk about that a minute, because, you know, you're in sport, you're in shape, you're moving around. When you get ready to fight, I've, you know, spoken to you, I've watched your stuff on social media. You're a serious individual. You do not take this lightly. You know, you accept the fight. And even as a trainer, when you've come to amateur shows that I've seen you on, you are serious. This is, you know, we're coming to fight. We're not here to play. We're not here. You know, you're in shape throughout camp. But it's the anxiety of getting ready to fight, the night of the fight. That's where I think fighters differentiate from when you're younger. That anxiety takes over. It's not that you're out of shape, because you did all the work. You did all the running. It's your mind playing with you the night of the fight sometimes.
I agree 100%. And that moment in the locker room, I don't remember if it was Custom Motto or Angelo Dundee that said it. It says that moment in the locker room either breaks or makes a fighter. And any fighter that tells you that they don't feel nerves is either two things. They're either lying to you or they're not human, right? Yeah. And I think as you gain experience, right, and when you're built for this type of sport, it's not that you don't feel nerves, but you learn how to manage them and use them to your advantage. Instead of letting it paralyze you, you thrive off of it.
Yeah, because, you know, and you're right, because anybody who tells you, I look at it this way: if you tell me you're not a little nervous, and you're full of shit. You're
Absolutely,
full of shit.
yeah.
Okay, you can say that in front of the cameras to everybody else, and okay, let's keep it real. And the same thing, you know, anybody tells you they like getting hit as a fighter is like, yeah, you're a little tweaked. There's something wrong with you, because we don't like getting hit. We don't want to be hit. You know what I mean? We want to hit and not get hit. But to manage all of that stuff, that goes to your team. You know, I think where coaches and your team around you help managing you before the fight, throughout the fight, in the locker room. You know, for me, as a coach, as a trainer, I have to look at that personality of the fighter. What makes that fighter tick? Some guys want to be by themselves. Some guys want the team around them. Some guys don't want a lot of people talking. Some guys, they have all their little routines. You have to pick up on that fighter's routine and kind of play off of that and know, okay, I see, yeah, okay, let's go. You know, he's getting a little nervous now, or you know what, he's good. See what kind of frame of mind he is. And build off of that. You can't control that fighter personality totally as a coach. You got to let him be a little bit of who he is and reassure him. You know, so the locker room, yeah. I mean, I like to keep it light. I don't know how you. My thought is on my head, but I also like to keep it light. I like to have a little music. Not too light, but, you know, to the point, and little key moments that we talk about stuff, laugh a little bit that happened in camp, and then kind of like interject what our fight plan is. Hey, you remember, like, okay, yeah, let's, you know, if he moves to his left, what are we going to do? What are we going to do this? What is he going to do? Yeah, I remember we worked on that. Remember, this is what we're looking to do. This is the plan, right? And you just keep hitting it like that with the fighters. But, you know.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, because I think that what was done in those 8 to 10 weeks in camp, whatever the duration of that camp was done, and what wasn't, right? And being all extra and being all hyped up, I think in those moments, if anything, they're gonna take the fighter out of his element. And I think, like you said, right, it's like learning to to read the fighter's personality, his demeanor, and seeing how he is. Some fighters are more chill. Some fighters are more to themselves. Some fighters are really reserved. And it's playing with it and knowing that you have to shift into that mentality where it's like, okay, now when it's time, we're 10 minutes away from showtime. Now it's time to lock in. It doesn't matter how calm of a demeanor you have. It's like, now it's time to lock in.
Yeah, now it's ready. Let's flip it back to you a little bit now. Your amateur career, throughout your amateur career, what was it always the focus to become a pro? Was that what it was, or did it just kind of evolve as you were a young amateur and you see, hey, I'm gaining success, I can do this at the next level? When was that like the thought for you? When did that come into play?
I think as young as 8 years old, when I had my first fight, I always wanted to be a pro.
Right.
Like, I think every young boxer's dream first is to be an Olympian, right? That never happened for me, right? Like, it doesn't happen to a lot of us. But the focus was always being a pro and hopefully becoming a world champion, right? And based off that was the way that my dad trained me. He always trained me to fight like a pro since I was a kid. As you can tell in a lot of my fights, I like to go down to the body a lot, right? And then that style like just shifted later throughout the years into my adolescence, all the way until I turned pro at 22 years old. 22 years old. And
when did the decision come to say, hey, now it's time. We need to switch from because that's always a tough base, right? Like I don't know how you stand or how your dad or your team stands on that. I see a lot of these kids have a lot of amateur fights. Maybe too much for my liking.
Right.
I think if you look at a fighter and he's on that track and he has that ability to become a pro, eventually you got to make that decision. Do I keep fighting him as an amateur? If he's not getting better and he's not fighting better amateur fights, or he's not going to fight for the Olympics, or he's not going to fight in major qualifying tournaments, what is the idea of keeping him as an amateur for?
Right.
Just to rack up wins. But when did it come for you that you thought that you and your team sat down and said, hey, Marcos, it's time?
Believe it or not, it was more of a me decision, right? In which my father and I, obviously, he's my trainer, and that's always been the goal. But then as a father, that's where you don't want to mess up, right? My dad was always very cautious on the side of letting me go. It's like, it's not time yet. It's not time. But there's no such thing as perfect timing. Sometimes you just have to wing it, man. And I think that when you're very confident in your ability, you know that the risk is always there. Once you take that headgear off, getting hit with 8 ounces, those are some real punches. But if you really believe in yourself that much, you have to take the risk eventually. And I decided actually to go to Vegas to train for my pro debut. And it's a crazy story, man. It would take like 4 hours to explain the story, but we ended up going to Mexico. We crossed the border, and we ended up winning in, I believe it was the first minute of the second round by knockout. And then we just had to jump back across the border and back to the U.S. we went.
Yeah. Do you think your dad was kind of waiting to see if it was your decision or not? Because I know, like, you know what? As trainers, yeah, you're right. Sometimes like, listen, it's time. And then, if you get a little hesitation from the fighter, I kind of want to say to that fighter, like, hey, I want to be a pro. I want him to come to me and say, hey, what do you think? Because now I know you're thinking like that, right? As a coach, right? I know. All right, he's thinking next level. He's thinking next step. Now, as the coach, I have to sit down and assess, is he ready? Can he do it? You know what I mean? Will he be successful in my head, or how do we make him successful? You know what I mean? And, sometimes you got to have hard conversations with people when I want to, you've been in gyms, everybody, yeah, I want to be a pro. Well, you want to be a pro. What, do you know what it takes to be a pro? No, but okay, so what's your plan? But back to you. Do you think it was your dad waiting to hear from you say, I'm ready?
I think he always knew that I was ready.
Yeah.
It was more of the maturity factor, right? And mentally, more than anything, he wanted to make sure that mentally I was in that right state of mind. Because as you know, once you turn pro, it's there's a lot of intangibles that you have to deal with, right? It's not only just the fighting part; it's the business part. It's It plays a big role.
And you guys do a lot. Your team does the whole thing. You're involved not only in, it's not just you fighting. You're doing setting it up, the business part and everything else. How, tell us a little bit about that, because people don't realize the back end of the business of this sport. They think they do.
Yeah. I think they watch a lot of Rocky movies. That's what they do, right?
Yeah.
And they formulate an opinion, or they formulate a thought process based off the movies, right? And the rep that the boxing business gets. But it's a lot of back end work, man. I think sometimes the biggest fight isn't even in the ring. Sometimes the biggest fight is outside of the ring. And people don't understand that making fights isn't as easy as people may think. Right? It's not just, I want to fight you. Let's sign a contract. Let's go. It has to do a lot with the TV networks, right? The purses. Also, depending on the type of promotion that you're signed with, some promotions only do in-house fights and things of that nature. And I could indulge in a lot of other things, right? But it takes a lot of work, man. It takes a lot of work. And I think that's why it's very important to have a team that knows how to play their role, as long as at the end of the day, we all meet that one goal, which is to end up winning, getting the fighter to successful.
And that's an important thing that you just said, playing your role. And, people, one thing about boxing, coming back in the old thing, the trainer kind of ran the show. The head trainer ran the show. And I still go by that. Like, you have a team, you have a head trainer, you have people involved. At the end of the day, everything goes through the head trainer, right? You got to play your role, because you know what? The fighter is the guy we're trying to get the win for. Not the trainers, not anybody else. Basically, what are we going to do to be successful? Because if the fighter's successful, the team's successful. That's all part of it. And I think a lot of people don't take boxing as a team sport. Me, I like to treat it as a team. So, like, we're working with a fighter, and you have a great team, right? You have great experience. Gary Stark, Joe Quiambo, your dad, right? 3 different levels of experience there. You got 6 eyes on you. They're all different. They're all telling you, but they're all telling you the same thing to get you in the same direction. Not the same thing, but they're all saying what they have to say to get you to the direction of winning in a positive way. It's not a fight. And I think people don't realize that about boxing today. It's like, it's not just one guy. It's a village to get a fighter ready. It takes a village to get a people ready for a fight.
And being able to set the ego aside. I think that's super important. And when you're able to work together collectively as a team, right, and be on the same page, it's the winning formula. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, no, you're right. And look, it is, because keeping the ego aside, that's a tough balance with a lot of teams. We see it. It's hard at times. It's hard. There's conflict. There's, everybody has their idea of what they think a fighter should be doing, or how fight, I might look at your style and say, hey, I think, and then another coach might look at you and say, hey, he should fight like this, or, you know what I mean? But I think if you take bits and pieces of everybody and say, look, it's like building a car, right? You got guys who put the motor together, you got guys who put the transmission together, you got guys who do the body work, paint it, then you got the driver. All those people put that car together so the driver could be successful. Well, that's what you build a fighter. Okay? Just because, hey, I might be holding pads, that's my job for this camp, or doing cups or whatever it is, doesn't mean you're not a vital part. You're a vital part, because there's going to come a time that fighter is going to really need your services of what you're doing. Maybe more than another coach in a fight.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there are a lot of stuff that people don't see on the back end of this business of fighting. Just let's talk about you for a second and your preparation for 4 rounds. Walk us through, what you did for that last fight. People say, like we were talking, 4 rounds. Walk us through that preparation for that fight.
Right. As we were talking off camera, right, and off air, it's 4 rounds is 12 minutes, right? But for those 12 minutes, we're preparing, at least how we prepare 8 to 9 weeks in advance, right? And we're not going into camp to get in shape. We're already in shape. It's more of a continuation and just stepping it up that much more. We do 2 and 3 a days. The closer we get to the fight, we do 3 a days. We'll spar in the morning. We'll do it like backwards, right? So we'll spar in the morning, then we'll run midday, rest for a couple hours, and then late at night we'll do our strength and conditioning work, right? That has to do a lot with weights, deadlifts, things of that nature, right? And then that's a repetitive process for the next 8 to 9 weeks. And of course, like some days you're going to feel more sore than others, right? Some days we spar 12, 13 rounds, right? Some days more technical. Some days they're more like rough in-house like types of sparrings. And so we have to adjust. But I think that's where the experience factor plays a big role as a coach, in which my dad and Gary, they're able to like gauge, okay, like Marcos maybe he's fatiguing a little bit. Let's give him some rest. Okay, now it's time to step it up and things of that nature.
Yeah. Now, you're a full-time fighter.
Full time.
So, a lot of guys, and they're not full-time fighters. They're working, and they have to balance this training and fighting. But, I mean, you're going hard for 8 weeks to fight 4 rounds.
Right.
And, early in the career, fighters don't make a lot of money.
No.
I mean, this is not, you're not doing it for like, okay, big, they see the pay-per-view paydays and stuff like that. People are like, oh, fighters don't make that much? No. Not all fighters make that much. That's the 1%er. How do you motivate yourself? I mean, because each fighter's different, but
Right.
because, like you said, there's highs and lows throughout that 8 weeks. How do you stay motivated?
Absolutely. So like for me, I box full time. I've been boxing full time since I was a kid. That's the only job I've ever had.
Yeah.
Right. But I go to school full time as well. And I go to school for sports management. And I'm studying that in order to be able to apply it to boxing. Right. But what motivates me is what money can't buy. And that's the glory, right? That euphoric feeling of being able to step in at Madison Square Garden, at the Mandalay Bay, and be on Showtime, be on Top Rank. It's like no money in the world can buy you that. You have to earn it. And that's what motivates me. That's what gives me that drive. The money's cool, but the money's a byproduct of doing your job well. And I don't need boxing. That's like a disclaimer. I don't need boxing. I do boxing because I love it.
You're making a good point, right? You're right. Because we all get started in this sport. It's not about money.
Right.
Right? Even, amateur level, there's no money in the amateur level. All right? Even as coaches, if you're coaching an amateur who's fighting a lot, you're spending a lot of time moving around, right? Your dad, I'm sure, you guys are going to gym to tournaments, travel, boom, 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 all over the place, right? But we don't get involved for the money, right? Listen, it's not bad to get paid, don't get me wrong, right?
right.
We all want, but it's the love of the game. Like I talk to people, it's because if you break down, right? And I don't want to get into it because I kind of, you and I both know what these promotions do. You probably, if you sat down and you said to somebody, okay, I fought 4 rounds as a professional. This is what I got paid. But this is how many hours I worked. They're going to go, are you crazy?
Yeah.
You did that for that? Most people don't understand, but it goes back to what you were just saying. It's that the love of the sport to say, hey, I can't buy this. I can't buy fighting in the Garden. I can't buy fighting in Vegas. And I'm going to lead into something else in a second, but I don't want to lose it off of this. But, we are out there, and I had a conversation with a trainer the other night, and we're talking about, a young fighter coming up and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, listen, it's about him right now. If he does X, Y, and Z, the money's going to come because he's a talented fighter.
Of course.
So you know what? You can't focus on the money. You have to focus on getting the fighter. If you focus on getting the fighter right and you do all the right things, the money will come if he's talented enough.
Right.
If he's talented enough. But, I get what you're saying because for me, it was never about the money. It was never about, like, I didn't even, in the beginning parts, like, you running around training, you getting barely anything. I work a job. Like, to me, I don't have to, boxing doesn't provide my family money.
Right.
It's what I love to do. It's part of me now. But you said you can't buy it. What about Jake Paul?
What about Jake Paul?
Yeah. So you say you can't buy that.
Right.
He is, what's your thoughts there? Because he has bought it.
Right.
He fought his first pro fight on Showtime. 17,000 people in the arena in Cleveland on a Sunday
for a
night.
title.
You
Right.
bought that.
And now you want me to answer?
Is that as a fighter, as a coach, as a trainer, about somebody who's going to be in this business when you're done fighting? What are your thoughts on that? Is it good for boxing? Is it bad for boxing? Is it sending the wrong message out there? Or is it just people can make money off of it?
So I think just like with anything in life, right? Everything has pros and cons, right? Let's look at the pros. Boxing is known for being a poor man's sport, right? Like you said, the majority of fighters, we have jobs. I'm blessed to just focus on boxing full time. So Jake Paul, what he's able to do, because professional boxing is very different to amateur boxing. Professional boxing is a sport, but it's a business. Amateur boxing is solely a sport. So in professional boxing, you're going to be attractive to a promoter if you're able to sell, right? If you're able to fill those arenas up, right? All those seats up. And Jake Paul, right, as you know, is a YouTuber with a massive following. So of course, it's more than logical that they're going to want to put him on Showtime. They're going to want to create an event, despite him not having any experience in boxing, right? Because he's able to sell, right? So to not stray away, I think it's beneficial for fighters coming up in the sense that if they're able to follow that blueprint, so to speak, right, of being able to market themselves and being able to fight, let's say, under MVP promotions, right, with Jake Paul, they're probably going to get paid more than they usually get paid in a different promotional company, right? It's the truth, right? But then we look at it on the con side, right? A lot of people may argue that it kills the essence of the sport. It becomes more of a spectacle as opposed to its blood and guts essence. That's what it is, right? So it depends on how you look at it. It's subjective, right? For me, like I said, there's pros and cons to it, right? But to each his own.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the pros and cons. I mean, look, the pros are that the fighters get paid. Anybody that fights on one of his promotions is going to come out with a good payday. I know somebody who fought on that card in Cleveland. You know, they made a good payday. You know, I think that's important because I do think the sport is, for what it is, there are guys out there breaking their ass and they're not making a lot of money. Boxing, you could win 20 fights and not make money. Win 20 fights as a Major League Baseball player, you know. Win 20 championships as an NBA player and you're paid off the roof. You know, but a fighter has to go through so many trials and tribulations to make a good living out of it. You know what I mean? And, you know, a little luck plays into play here also as a fighter, who you're with, who you end up fighting, what promotional company, timing, and everything else. So I think at that aspect of it is there's that kind of hope for a fighter to say, hey, if I can get on that promotional card, I'm going to get a good payday, and it's going to be worth what I've been doing. But the con, I think, as a fighter is like you have fighters out there that have been grinding in this sport, and here comes this, money moves the fighter. The sport is about money. How many asses they're going to put in the seat, how many pay-per-views, you know, the networks, the sponsors, everything, you know. I get all of that aspect, but as a fighter working his way who might have, you know, 10, 15, 20 fights and has been putting in the time, fighting hard fights, you know, maybe not getting that big opportunity to make the payday, I could see where he says, like, dude, it's
not worth it.
It's not right. You know what I mean? It's like with boxing, we know the business of boxing, right? Now boxing makes up its own rules. We make sanctioning bodies can do whatever they basically want. We don't know what the hell they do. You know, you go to football, right? You have to win X amount of games to get to the playoffs. You got to win the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. You got to win the Super Bowl. It's defined. We take and make up belts, champions. Oh, you're fighting for the mid-continental da-da-da-da-da-da belt. What the hell is that, right? I think, you know, it's not so cut and dried in boxing, and it's because there's no real – there should be one sanctioning body. I go by the WBC, that green belt. That's it. That's That's the one right there. As a fighter, I want that belt. Any other belt, great, but I want my fighter, or as a coach, give us that WBC championship belt. That's the one that means the most, I think.
Right.
And all these other little divisions are great. And I think there should be more of a challenging system. Like if you're ranked in the top 20, there's no cherry picking. Okay, we're gonna have fight offs. You fight your way to the top. You keep winning. You keep going.
Right. Of course.
You know what I mean? But it doesn't happen that way so much. And I mean, I think that's where maybe a fighter will see what Jake Paul is doing as a negative, because think about it. If you were 20-0 and you're knocking on the door, right? And they put a card out and they bring this guy, and this guy. Like, hey, man, I've been here. What about me?
It makes it feel like paying your dues really has no or holds no significance, because it's like you mentioned, right? It's like someone that has no amateur accolades. It's just a famous YouTuber comes in and they get placed in a position like that. And then there goes a young amateur that's been grinding for years, right? Going to tournaments, spending all this money, right? People think that in amateur boxing they make money. If anything, you're losing money, right?
No, yeah. You know what? You're losing money and time, because if you're in school or you're working or whatever it is, you're spending your own money to get there.
Right.
Maybe you have a little sponsorship by somebody, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But excuse me. I just want to take a drink here real quick and clear my throat. Now, you said you're going to school for sports management.
Correct.
And we talk about boxing, YouTubers, social media, whereas boxing now is social media in every sport, every aspect is playing a big part of the sport. We see fighters, posting stuff every day. And I think it's an important part of the sport, because it's easier if you're a fighter who's grinding, like you said. Okay, guys can now follow you. Oh, man, look at this guy in New York, Marcos Paz. Oh, man, he fought this guy. He's doing it. Oh, man. Let's get him on a card, or let's give him an opportunity, or, fan base now. Whereas you're a business. You're a fighter. You're the business, right? You're, and you have yourself and your business to look at. How do you look at that now as a fighter? Because your job is just not to fight anymore.
Mm-mm.
And now you have old school like your dad and Gary. I'm sure they're not worried about social media.
Not at all.
They're not worried about, hey, Marcos, we got to go over here to promote you. And, I know you're all over the place, shows and out there, putting your brand out there. What do you see as that as a young fighter coming up, and how do you manage that with getting ready for a fight?
I think that's part of also having the whole package, right? Because you're no longer an amateur boxer, you're a professional boxer. Emphasis on professional, right?
Yeah.
Professional, all senses of the word. Professional at fighting and how you conduct yourself outside the ring, your image, what you represent, how you're marketable, creating a tie, so to speak, with the fans, right? And the audience in which they can relate to you. And then part of your talent is also your ability to sell, right? So I think it's super important. To me, it's super important, at least.
How do you balance that during camp?
It's hard.
That's a tough balance, right? I mean, I realize that we have to do it. It's a distraction.
Oh, big time.
It's a distraction, because when you guys stop during training, you're taking pictures, you're taking video, or you're having somebody do it, or however you're doing it. How does that affect you during camp?
To me, Dave, to be quite honest, I always say the priority is to train, right? You could take all the pictures, you could have the best marketing team in the world, right? And they could market the shit out of you. But if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're in for a rude awakening on fight night.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's part of your job. So I think you have to place things in list of importance, right?
But here you are as a young fighter coming up in this game, right? You're not signed by a promotional company. Your guys are doing this on your own right now, okay? The money is not where it should be at right now. It's
Mhm.
You're working towards that, right? To do what you're doing right now, you need assistance. So that stuff is leading to hopefully sponsors, whether it
Of
could
course.
be for your gear, for your food, for your recovery, for your training stuff. So I kind of look at it as like that's part of the business now, but the managing end of it is a very fine line, I think, because you're right,
tedious.
because you can't negate getting ready for the fight. That's the priority. But also to get ready for the fight, what is this? Hey, we need gear, or you know what? I need to recover. I need to go to a gym. I need a chiropractor. I need whatever it is like that. That exhausts revenue.
And also, right, like you said, the business end of it, right, in the sense of like, hey, like how can you expect for a promoter to put you on the card if you can't sell tickets? And how are people going to buy into your brand, buy into you if they don't know you? You have to promote yourself.
So let's talk about that because I think you're very good at that. From a distance, I watch you, right? I ran into you at the Irish card, Pepsi, right? You got it all. You were there handing out your stuff for your fight, watching the fights and everything else, and you're very exuberant. How does that like come into play, and what is your when you're doing that in your promotion? What is your idea? I'm getting ready to fight. You're obviously going to school, so you have that business end. You're thinking, okay, I'm fighting the business end. What is your way of promoting yourself?
My approach has always been to be genuine, to be who I am. You see a lot of fighters put on a persona or put on this mask of someone that they're not. As you guys know, controversy sells, right? But eventually, right, people get tired of wearing that mask. It takes a toll. It takes a toll on you as an athlete or as an individual. But for me, it's like I am who I am. I'm a very extroverted, charismatic person,
Yeah.
very sociable. So I use those organic traits that are within me uh, to my benefit. I go out and socialize with people. I'm here with you with the undisputed, often imitated, never duplicated Coach Dave, right? Coach's Corner.
Yeah, but you know what? Like we've been talking, and I saw you at the last show, and I was like, "Look, here we are, sit today." But
Yeah.
you were there working the crowd.
I was working as media that day.
Huh?
I was working as media that day.
Oh, you were working as media that
Yeah,
day?
because a lot of people don't know that's what I do. I interview a lot of the fighters as well.
Okay.
And I use it as a way also to gain connections, right, with other people in the boxing industry because it's important in any line of work to have firm professional connections.
No, I know. And you know what? The one thing about the boxing world is, look, the relationships you build. Boxing is a very small community, and like yourself, I've been blessed, and I've built some great relationships with, people at all levels of it. And I find most people involved in the sport are very, you pick up the phone, they're very accommodating. You run into them, hey, you might not see a guy for years. I'd see him at a show, hey. And it's just reconnects. And it's a great community like that. But what does your future look like? What is your aspiration now? Is it more, I want to put this the right way, because you're a multifaceted individual, most different than other fighters, I think. You're thinking bigger picture, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that when it's over in boxing, you still want to be involved, but you want to be involved in the right way,
Right.
as a company. What's your aspiration now? You've had this last fight. What do you go back with your team, and what are you guys looking at target wise, and say, hey, are you looking to sign? Are you looking to be a freelancer? Are you looking to, where do you see yourself going?
Right. So, I mean, I obviously, like any other fighter, we all want to be world champions, right?
Right.
Now we know this, and I'm a realist. I'm a person that lives in reality. It's like not all of us are going to become world champions because of many reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the goal. That's the end goal. But I take one fight at a time, right? We already got this one out the way. I'm 4-0 currently. Focus on 5-0, right? And that's what we're gonna do. But to stay active, right? To stay active, there was a period that I had of inactivity within my career, and just now we got the ball rolling once again. A lot of momentum, And I'm looking to stay as busy as possible, man. And obviously, the goal is to sign with a manager, with a well-known manager that has the knowledge and pull behind them to be able to guide my career. Eventually, if any promoters, top-notch promoters, are interested in us, we're open to working with them as long as it makes sense. And yeah, man, I think that we have to prepare as fighters for life after boxing because, and there's been various people that have told me this, that your boxing life is like this.
Correct.
And your actual life is like this. So you have to take advantage of that window that you have as a fighter and start thinking of the exit route while you're still active. It's like some people, okay, like they have a business. Some people go to school. As for myself, I'm involved as a trainer, learning under my dad's wing and under a lot of great coaches. I'm also involved in media, and I'm looking to do something big in boxing once my career as a fighter is done. But I'm starting now. I'm not waiting till it's over.
Well, now is the moment because here's the deal, right? Once you're out, you're out. You start to lose your relationships. You can't come back. You can't come back in. Makes it harder, right? But you're right in the forest right now with everything around you. Let's flip back for a second. You mentioned something, your inactivity. How did you deal with that as a fighter? Because inactivity with a fighter, that's it's tough. It's tough to stay motivated. It's tough to be in the gym when you don't have stuff going on and say, hey, I'm training, but I really don't have a fight, or I have a fight and it falls out. And how did you manage yourself mentally during inactivity?
It's hard, man. It really is because, like you said, ring rust is very real. And the ability to stay in the gym, right? Because just like with any other skill, you stop doing it, you start losing, your sharpness.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm a Christian, I believe a lot in Jesus Christ. So it's my faith that really kept me going, right? My faith and my self-belief. Like, there was times where I really felt like throwing in the towel, man, because, I would get ready for a fight. 8 weeks, fight fell out. Same thing, like 5-6 times, right? And after a period of time, it's like, you're like, man, is this really worth it? I passed up on opportunities outside of boxing that were really good financially just because I know that I needed to devote all my time to boxing. And eventually, right when I believe it was like 2 months, I told my dad, I was like, man, I don't think I want to do this anymore. It's right when the opportunity came. But I made sure I was prepared. And that's where the famous saying goes, when opportunity meets preparation, that's where success happens.
Yeah. But, you also are working with fighters. You have your nephew, we've seen as an amateur, right? You guys fought in the gloves this year in New York. You've been working with him for a couple of years now. You're in other gyms. You're around the sport, so that can kind of keep you, okay, I'm still in the sport. I'm busy. I'm in the gym. Whereas maybe someone just in the fight game is like, okay, man, it's a little tougher for them to stay motivated, But it is a tough grind to go up and down, to get ready for a fight and then the fight falls, or to have that inactive part. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
No problem. Go ahead. We love the pressure.
Okay. Because you wear so many hats, right? And fighter trainer. Is it fighter trainer or management after this? Because where do you see, I'll make it a little simple for you. After your career as a fighter, where do you see yourself? As a trainer or more on the management end of the business?
I would say more on the management end, definitely. Training, I do believe, and obviously I'm young in the game. I don't have the experience that you have, right? The experience that coaches like Gary have, and so forth.
Yeah, but you're gathering it.
Right.
You're gathering it right now.
And without tooting my own horn, right, I know there's a lot of learning left to be done, but I feel like I'm acquiring those skills very well. But when it comes to the managerial side, I really do believe, since I've had to learn a lot of things out of necessity, right, for my own career, I think that I've developed that ability at such a young age that I want to be on the business end once my career as a fighter is over, to be able to guide fighters to not go through what I went through. I learned through trial and error with my dad.
We all, listen, there's no playbook for this game. Everybody thinks there's a playbook, right? There's no playbook. It's all trial and error. It's all, take the right fight, take the wrong fight, sign with this guy, don't sign with that guy, you know, flip a coin, right? But okay, let me ask you this now, right? What do you think? You're the next generation coming up, right? You're learning on this. As in the management end of the sport, what kind of changes would you look to make working with fighters in the future? What do you think you see that you can bring to the table and, be helpful, be a little more helpful to these fighters in this sport?
Right. Well, and as in my case, I would say definitely being fighter first, right? Because boxing has a bad reputation for the manager, which isn't usually it's not the guy that's getting hit, right? Well, in the past, I believe it was like 30%, sometimes even 25%.
Well, manager can make up to 33.33% legally.
Right, in which I don't knock it depending, right? Depending on what it is, if he's giving you a stipend, if he's taking care of your car, like, because as a fighter,
there's a lot of aspects of that depending on what deal you take, right?
Exactly.
But one thing I go like this, right? Do numbers, right? Do numbers.
Numbers don't lie.
Right, numbers don't lie, right? You give a manager up to 33%, whatever deal, right? That's
right.
33%. You've already given away 33%, right? You got to pay your corner 15%, right? That's 48% right there.
Taxes.
Right? That's 48% of your purse that you're giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you got a promotional company, they're taking a piece. By the time you're done, you gave up 50% or better of Marcos Paz.
Right.
Who's the business?
Right. And who's taking the hits?
But you're the business.
Right.
Because without Marcos Paz, the manager, the promoter, and the corner can't make a living.
And it's good that you touched upon that, Dave, because boxers, they hire the manager, right? Yet they feel like the manager is the boss. The boss is the fighter, right? In that sense. But everybody plays their role, right? So to not stray off what I was telling you is that I really do believe that I have the social skills, I have the interpersonal relationships that I've created. So I was a kid, man, in this boxing world. We know a lot of mutual people.
Yeah, you're all over the place. Like, for people who don't know, I mean, you're in Vegas, you're out of the country, you're at big fights, you have the ability to go into, different gyms, talk to different trainers, talk to different people in this sport. And, whether it's for yourself or for a fighter or for somebody else, you have that ability to do it. You know what I mean? I just think right now, I don't like to use the word manager anymore. I like to use the word advisor.
Advisor, yeah.
Advisor. You know what I mean? Because basically, most fighters today are very educated about what's going on. They're around people. They know. Okay? Unless, like you said, you're taking a big stipend, and once you take that money, best believe you're paying that money back somewhere. It's not free money.
I like
That's
that,
what fighters think, okay, man, I'm going to get, manager's going to sign you. And I've seen contracts, and I know you have, right? And I have an old Don King contract from a fighter. I think that poor fighter's kids are still under contract with Don King. That's how airtight this contract. Like, you know what? And I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty good at reading stuff.
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me, man? You signed this?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I signed it. I go, why? He goes, well, it was Don King. I said, Don King? I said, forget it. He owns you.
And then the fight usually this is what happens. The fighter's complaining and throwing a fit. Yet at the end of the day, it's your John Hancock, right? On that piece of paper. You're acknowledging that you're conscious of what you're signing. And I think that's where fighter education lacks, right? It's like surrounding yourself with a solid team. And like I've learned this through my years. Like I used to sneak into the locker rooms at 14 years old. Right, I used to sneak into the locker rooms. And they can't do it to me now because I got the actual media pass, but I used to forge the media pass. Right? And I would pick up on little things like that. I was 14, 15 years old, but I always had that mindset of being like a sponge and learning. It's like surrounding yourself with a good lawyer, right? A lawyer that's knowledgeable in that area that can break it down to you. A good accountant, things like that. Things that fighters don't think about, but it's necessary, man, because you're an entity, you're a brand.
Well, and that's the other thing. You're an entity. You're a brand, right? So you have to think of yourself like a business. You have to think of yourself like, hey, the higher you go in the sport, the more money you start making, sponsorships, whatever it is, fighting. Because look, your fight life is you'll be lucky if you fight. If you go up to the highest level, these guys are fighting 2 times a year.
Right.
Maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe, but not as much. Higher level fighters aren't fighting 4. They're fighting maybe 2 times a year. You got to make that worth your while.
Of course.
You know, and the more you make, the more the people are going to take out of you. And you have to make sure that, you know, you're safeguarding that. But, you know, I think the education needs to be brought out. Like, everybody's entitled to make their money, right? If you're helping fighters, whatever, within a reason.
Right.
Right? There's a value. Like, you can't gouge it. I would never, like, you know, look, I've worked with fighters who've made little purses, and it's like, bro, I'm not taking anything off of this fight. I said, you know what? Your purse is not that much. I'm working a job. We're good.
Even at that, let me interject in that. As a fighter, though, even though it's not a lot, like you and me are conscious, we know the numbers, right? We're not going to disclose it here for the camera. We know the numbers. But I've always been accustomed, and that's the way that I was raised. It's the principle, right? It's like acknowledge. It's like, yo, this person, right? If it was Freddie Roach, if it was Floyd Mayweather Sr., they wouldn't do it for free, right? So it's the principle of things, right?
Yeah, you're right about the principle of things, but sometimes, you know what, Marcos, karma is karma.
Right.
If there's bread on the table, everybody's got to eat, right? Of
course.
I agree with that. But you know what? If I'm working and you're struggling and you need to make that money for your family,
right?
Principle don't mean shit at that point.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like I'm like you. I'm a Christian. I want to believe, like, listen, we're good.
Right.
We're good. I'm happy with the win. I'm happy with where we are right now. And you know what? And then I'm thinking bigger picture too. You know, thinking bigger picture. All right, we'll have more coming down the line. We'll have something else coming down the line.
Right
here. So
get me an old boat later down the line when you make a decent
you know
paycheck.
What, man? Just keep me moving somewhere. You know what I mean? If you start a gym, just give me a little office in the corner. Right, we're good. But yeah, I think that's important going forward. And that going back to one other thing, that's what I like about Jake Paul. Jake Paul's thinking business, taking care of fighters.
Yeah.
At a bigger level. You know, not just one fight at a time, pay you out. I like that part about him that he brings to the table. You know, and he's a little controversial. And I think, you know what? People want to see if he can fight or not. You know, I think he's bringing a little bit of the younger generation back to the sport that we don't have today. You know, UFC is all these different combat leagues are taking away from the sport of boxing.
What are your thoughts? I'm going to ask you a question. What are your thoughts on the whole Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul situation? A lot of people, like, you know, the general public that's not really into boxing, they have their thoughts on it. If you could give me your thoughts, Coach.
All right, so I grew
up. You
up.
can plead the fifth, too.
I'm not
you can plead the fifth, too.
I grew up watching Mike Tyson.
Right.
I never met him in person, and I never saw him fight live, or I never seen him train. I only know what I seen and I heard. Right? So, you know, I had Peter McNeely on the show who fought Mike Tyson when Mike got out of jail. And Peter and I had great conversations about Mike and how he hit. And, you know, Mike knocked Peter out in a minute and change. But Peter said, look, this is how I fought my whole life. I went after Mike. And my theory was he was coming out of jail. We had to get him early. Because if we didn't get him early, you know. And he said, you know, Mike hit like a tank. You know, Peter McNeely's 6'4", 6'5", big guy, telling me. So, you know what? And we all watched Tyson, all the whole thing, you know, Holyfield, all the ear bite and stuff. We watched the training. Mike Tyson, as a fighter to me, at 58, still could throw combinations and still could hurt somebody. So I felt that if he was able to unleash the way Mike Tyson was, he was not a toned down guy. I think, you know, he was either all in or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you
so
mean.
So I think if he, and you saw it early in the fight, he threw 2 jabs like old Mike Tyson. And Jake Paul went running. And I think it was choreographed after that. But honestly, I think if Tyson really unleashed, he would have hurt Jake Paul.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's like once it's in your DNA, Like they say, even if you're an old head, it's in you, man. And if you notice one thing too, a lot of people didn't pick up on this. Search it up on YouTube. Mike, and there was moments in the fight where he would bite his glove right here, right, and it was like he had a tick, like he was trying to hold back from throwing that uppercut. You know, that
Yeah.
shifting uppercut that he used to throw like this.
Listen, as a fighter, old habits die hard.
Yeah.
Old habits die hard. And he was an aggressive fighter. And I said to people, I said, like, look, let me put it to you this way. If Tyson was in front of you, would you take 3 shots from him at 60 years old?
I
would.
so.
Right? I said, let's put it to you this, even tone it down a little bit. Would you hold pads for him? A regular person, not a coach. Would you hold pads for Mike Tyson at 60 years old? I think he'd rip your shoulder off. So, listen, I think that at the end of the day, they both made a lot of money. I think people like myself were looking to see if there was a glimpse of one more time they'd get to see Mike Tyson knock somebody out. The guys like watched him fight in his prime. I think it gave the younger generation of your generation of fighters and young fans coming up the chance to see a Hall of Famer, a ferocious heavyweight, great puncher, controversial, all of that stuff out there, and got to see him fight. And you know what? At the end of the day, Jake Paul can tell his grandkids, I've beat Mike Tyson. They're not going to know that it was an old Mike Tyson because you go to BoxRec, right? 10 years from now, right? We've all seen fighters, right? I have fighters, they beat this fighter. Well, we know they beat that fighter at the end of his career.
Past his prime.
All right, I have a family member that beat Sugar Ray Robinson in Robinson's last fight.
Wow.
Okay? And, you look at BoxRec, I beat Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah. Still under
Right?
your belt.
They don't know Robinson was done.
Right. Still under your
Boxing
belt.
people do.
Right.
Boxing people do, right?
Yeah.
But, so you know what? I think that's where it was. I think Tyson was held back and he knew it. And you know what? God bless him. He made a lot of money. Jake Paul made a lot of money. I think they made a noise in boxing again. And, I think we're going to see something, maybe not Mike Tyson again, but I think some of these guys, we're going to see them come out again. And look, as a fighter, I think when you're sitting there and to walk back down from that locker room to the ring with people cheering for you again is, the feeling, whether it's in front of 5,000 people or 50,000 people, man, that just pumps you up. It's a crazy feeling.
And it's crazy that you mentioned that because I was just talking with my cousin about that, or my nephew, my nephew, that walk to the ring, it's a euphoric feeling. It's like 10 seconds. It's like a blur, man. It's like when they call you up and they have the camera in front of you and you're walking down the stairs, and then all of a sudden you hear the ring announcer call you in, and you see depending on where you're at, right, with the show, it's like you see the flares come up, your face on the LED screen. It almost feels like it's not real, man. It's like you're living a real life
it's like
movie.
you're walking, you're like floating. I know. It's like, you know what? I've worked at different level fights, and you walk out, and it's like, man, people, you see them and hear them, but you really don't see them and hear them.
And that's where I go back to saying it's not about the money. It's about what money can't buy. It's that feeling. It's the glory, right? And then obviously we're in the hurt business, right? At the end of the day, no one wants to get hit for free, but the money's just a byproduct of doing your job well, right? You got to do it because you have a love for the sport. You have a passion to be a champion because you have a passion to fight.
Listen, if you don't hear from a fighter that he wants to be a champion, I don't know. I don't care how good or bad they are, man. Like you said, I want to hear it, man. I want to be a champion. Okay. Let's see if we can make that road. Let's see if we can get to that road. That's the starting point. Now the next question is, are you willing to do what champions do?
I think, and you touched upon a good topic because a lot of people say that they want to be champions. I don't think they want to be champions. I think that they want what comes with being a champion.
Yeah, I think that's the case too because you know what? And I do this with I assimilated with Floyd Mayweather. I'm like, listen, Floyd Mayweather made a ton of money in his career, but you'd watch him running at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah,
you watch him training. it didn't matter who he fought. He got ready.
Yeah.
He took it seriously. And he didn't have to get out of bed. He didn't have to. You know, like it didn't. He fought, you know, everybody they put in front of him. You know, they could say he ducked it. Whoever they put in front of him, he fought and he prepared. And you got to respect that. So I think, you know what, for future fighters coming up, yeah, what are you willing to do to become a champion? What are you willing to sacrifice?
Right, right.
Because it's a sacrifice. If you're not sacrificing in boxing, you're not going to go anywhere.
It's impossible, man.
Because you're sacrificing your time, your family, you know, your body. That's the sacrifice. You know, most people, you know, while you're out running at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're sleeping. You're training that third session at 10 o'clock at night. They're home with their kids or they're out with their friends. Or,
Yeah.
you know, eating in a restaurant or whatever the case they're doing, you know, vacations.
And the big prop to the coaches too, because that's the unsung heroes of the sport, right? Where the people see the fighters, but they don't know that the fighters aren't anything without the coaches, right? Coaches that could be spending time with their kids, with their wife. They could be on vacation, right? But they're pouring all their time into the fighter. And as fighters, we have to acknowledge that, and we have to be conscious of that and be just with the people that got us there. It's impossible for us to do this on our own. You know?
Yeah, no, and then that goes back to the team aspect that we're talking about. So we're going to kind of wrap it up here a little bit and kind of hit you with a couple of things here. First of all, what advice would you give a young fighter, a young trainer today, if you were to give some encouraging words or advice for someone in the sport? What would that advice be?
Don't let a win get to your head, and don't let a loss get to your heart. You know, it's like a loss is part of the game. Eventually, we're all going to lose. I'm not trying to be negative.
Yeah.
Eventually, I'm going to lose. It's relative. It's very rare to find that person that has the O, right?
There's only 2 of them right now, Mayweather and Marciano.
Right.
So there's only 2 of them. And, you know, there's a lot of good fighters in between those 2 names.
Yeah. Great fighters.
Great fighters. Exactly. Tell us a little bit about what's next for Marcos Paz and Marcos Paz Entertainment and the business end of this, and where we can find you on social media, and plug yourself here.
Right. All right, guys. This Coach Dave gave me the green light. I'm about to do it. So right now we just got off this fight. We're always in the gym. You know, I rarely take a break. And right now we're waiting to see if we potentially fight on a Top Rank card, maybe a DAZN card, something of that nature, right?
Right.
So anybody that's in the New York City area, make sure to tune in. It's going to be a movie as always. And social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Marcos Paz 1. That's MarcosPaz 1. Any managers that are looking to sign a great fighter such as myself, a charismatic fighter that can sell, you know where to find me. Sponsors, you guys could holler at me at mpsponsorships@gmail.com.
All right. Well, you know, we look forward to catching you on your next show. Obviously, you know, we have the Summer Sizzler coming up. We hope to see you and your nephew there. We extend the invitation. We try to make that match there. And, you know, look, we wish you great success in what you're doing and excited to watch your career unfold. I know not only as a fighter, but somebody in this sport, you're somebody to be watched. And, you know, keep an eye on this young man. He's not only an up-and-coming fighter, but this man lives the sport. He is somebody that when he is done fighting, you're going to be hearing some great things about it. Fighters, somebody you can learn from, somebody who's got a passion, who knows the sport. So, you know, from Coach's Corner, we want to thank all you subscribers, my sponsor, Farmer Strength, Get Elevated. We appreciate all the love, everybody reaching out. And from Coach's Corner, we will see you in the next round.
And the last words, I want to give a big special shout out to Coach's Corner, Coach Dave McDonough, and the great work that he does putting all this together, giving all us fighters the opportunity to share our story, to speak about our careers, and just make sure to follow him and support him. He's doing something great for the sport.
Appreciate you, Marcos. Thank you very much.